We need to talk about this.
There's nothing more to discuss.
Please, just listen.
One quiet evening, I walked into a small restaurant and saw something that should have shattered me. My wife was sitting across from another man, laughing the way she used to laugh with me. They were holding hands under the table. For a moment, my heart felt like it stopped. But instead of shouting, instead of causing a scene, I calmly walked up to their table. They looked up at me in shock. And then I said one sentence that turned the color from their faces and left them completely frozen. From the outside, our life looked almost perfect. My wife, Emily, and I had been married for 7 years. We lived in a quiet neighborhood where the streets were lined with tall trees and friendly neighbors who waved every morning. Our house was not huge, but it was warm and full of memories. Photos from our wedding sat on the living room shelf, smiling back at us like a reminder of the promises we once made. People often told us we were a great couple. At family gatherings, my friends joked that I was a lucky one. Emily had a bright smile and a laugh that could fill a room. When she walked in, people noticed. I used to feel proud standing beside her. In the early years of our marriage, everything felt simple and honest. We cooked dinner together most nights. Sometimes we would sit on the couch long after midnight, talking about our dreams and the future we wanted to build. But slowly, things began to change. At first, it was small things that were easy to ignore. Emily started coming home later from work. She said her office had new projects that required extra hours. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. Then she began keeping her phone close all the time. If a message arrived, she would glance at the screen quickly and turn it away. When I asked who it was, she would give short answers and change the subject. The laughter that once filled our house started to fade. Our conversations became shorter. Sometimes it felt like she was somewhere else even when she sat right across from me. I told myself I was imagining things. Every marriage has rough moments. At least, that is what I kept telling myself. The first real crack in my trust appeared on a quiet Thursday night. Emily came home much later than usual. It was close to 11, and I had already finished dinner alone. The house was silent, except for the ticking clock in the kitchen. When I heard the front door open, I felt a small wave of relief. She walked in looking tired, but something about her felt different. She gave me a quick smile and placed her purse on the table. "Long day," she said. I nodded and tried to sound normal. "You said you would be home by 7. She shrugged and walked past me. "Work got crazy. You know how it is." As she moved closer, I noticed a faint smell of perfume. It was not the one she usually wore. It was softer and unfamiliar. I stood there for a moment, trying to convince myself it meant nothing. Maybe someone at the office wore it. Maybe I was overthinking. But that night something else caught my attention. Emily kept her phone in her hand almost the entire evening. When a message appeared on the screen, she turned slightly away before reading it. A small smile touched her face for a second before she locked the phone again. "Who's texting you this late?" I asked. She looked up quickly. "Just work stuff." Her answer came too fast. Over the next few weeks, little things kept adding up. She started leaving the room when she answered calls. Her phone now had a new passcode. If I walked into the room suddenly, she would turn the screen off right away. One afternoon, a friend of mine mentioned something strange without realizing it. He said he thought he saw Emily at a cafe across town a few days earlier. She was not alone. At that moment, a cold feeling settled deep in my chest. For days after my friend mentioned Faye, I tried to push the thought out of my mind. I told myself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe it was a co-worker. Maybe he had made a mistake. Still, the uneasy feeling refused to leave. One evening I finished work earlier than expected. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and gold. As I drove home, I had an idea that felt simple and hopeful. Emily loved a small restaurant downtown. It was the place where we celebrated our first wedding anniversary. We had not been there in a long time. I decided to surprise her. I sent her a short message saying I would be home late because of work. Then I drove straight to the restaurant, thinking maybe we could bring back a little of what we had lost. The restaurant was warm and softly lit, with quiet music playing in the background. The smell of fresh bread and roasted meat fill the air as I stepped inside. I took a few steps forward. Then I stopped. At a table near the window, I saw Emily. For a moment, my mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. She was sitting across from a man I had never seen before. They were leaning toward each other, speaking softly. Emily laughed, the same warm laugh that once filled our home. But what made my heart drop was not the laughter. It was the way their hands rested together on the table. Not like friends, not like co-workers, like two people who shared something secret. My chest felt tight, as if the air had suddenly disappeared from the room. In that moment, every late night, every strange message, and every uneasy feeling suddenly made sense, and my world became very quiet. For a few seconds, I could not move. The noise of the restaurant faded into the background. Plates clinked somewhere behind me. People talked and laughed, but it all sounded distant, like I was underwater. My eyes stayed fixed on the table near the window. Emily was still smiling at the man across from her. She looked relaxed, comfortable, like she belonged there, like she had done this before. A wave of anger rushed through my chest, hot and sharp. Part of me wanted to walk over there and flip the table. Another part wanted to turn around, walk out the door, and pretend I had never seen any of this. But neither of those choices felt right. Instead, I took a slow breath. Then I started walking. Each step toward their table felt heavy, like my shoes were filled with stone. My heart was beating hard, but my face stayed calm. I did not want to give them the scene they probably expected. As I moved closer, Emily finally noticed me. At first, her expression showed simple confusion. She blinked once, like she thought she was imagining things. Then the color drained from her face. Her eyes widened, and her body went completely still. The man across from her followed her gaze and turned his head. He looked at me, then back at Emily. Neither of them spoke. I reached their table and stopped beside it. For a moment, the three of us just stood there in silence. The tension in the air felt thick enough to touch. Emily opened her mouth, but no words came out. I looked down at their hands resting on the table. Slowly, they pulled them apart. I felt a strange calm settle inside me. It was not happiness, and it was not peace. It was something colder, something clear. I placed one hand on the back of the empty chair beside them. Then I looked directly at my wife. When I spoke, my voice was quiet and steady. "Don't worry," I said. "You don't have to hide anymore." Both of them stared at me. I already know. For a moment, neither of them moved. Emily stared at me like the ground had just opened beneath her feet. The man across from her looked confused, his eyes shifting between the two of us, as if he was trying to understand what was happening. "Listen, this is not what it looks like," Emily finally said, her voice shaking. It was the oldest line in the world, and hearing it almost made me smile. I pulled out the empty chair and sat down at the table with them. I did not rush. I did not raise my voice. I simply looked at her. "Really?" I asked quietly, because it looks exactly like what I thought it was. The man cleared his throat and leaned back slightly. He seemed uncomfortable now, like someone who had just realized he had stepped into a problem much bigger than he expected. Emily shook her head quickly. "I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how." I studied her face for a moment. The same face I had trusted for years now looked nervous and pale. "You know how?" I repeated softly. "Emily, you have had plenty of time." Her eyes filled with tears. "It just happened. I never meant for it to go this far." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. I had not planned this moment exactly, but something inside me had been preparing for it ever since my doubts began. I placed the envelope gently on the table between us. Emily looked down at it, then back at me. "What is that?" she whispered. "Something I finished earlier today," I said calmly. Her hands trembled as she slowly opened the envelope. Inside were divorce papers. The moment she realized what she was holding, her face went completely pale. The man beside her said nothing. He just stared at the table. Emily called my name as I stood up, but I did not stop. Her voice followed me across the restaurant, shaking with panic. Yet my steps stayed steady. I walked out into the cool evening air and closed the door behind me. For the first time in weeks, my mind felt clear The pain was still there, but so was something stronger. I had finally faced the truth. Sometimes the hardest moment in life is the one that gives you your dignity back. I lost a woman I thought I loved that night, but I also found something far more important. I found my self-respect.